Hi everyone. I'm trying to finish number 21, Civil War on Sunday, Magic Treehouse. We're on chapter 6, Keep Low. The wagon jerked and swayed as it bumped over the dry ground. So remember, if we back up a little bit, Jack and Annie are in a wagon with the angel of the battlefield nurse from the Civil War named Clara Barton. Jack felt as though he were frying in the hot sunlight. Dust from the road filled his throat and eyes. The boom of cannons grew louder and louder. Jack heard popping sounds too, like the noise of firecrackers. "What's the popping noise?" he shouted, blinded by the dust and the sunlight. "Musket fire," said Clara. Jack remembered that muskets were long, old-fashioned guns. "What are those flashes of light?" asked Annie. Jack tried to open his eyes to see what she was talking about. He saw bright flashes of light in the distance and puffs of smoke in the sky. So when they describe them being on the battlefield, that's where a lot of the war is happening. "Cannon shells are exploding," said Clara Barton. "Shells are like small bombs. They have ruined much farmland." Jack squinted at the passing countryside. The ground was filled with ugly holes. Long ditches were also cut through the fields. "Did the shells make those ditches too?" he asked. "No, those are trenches that the soldiers dug for a battle," Clara said. "Each side digs their own. Day after day they sit in the trenches, firing their muskets at one another." Jack tried to imagine how terrible it would be to just sit in a trench all day, waiting to be shot or waiting to shoot someone else. "We have to get some water," said Clara. She drove the wagon to a very narrow creek. A stream of water flowed downhill, running over the rocks. The wagon came to a halt. Jack heard a whistling sound and then another. "Keep low!" cried Clara. "What is that?" Jack asked. "Cannon fire," she said. Jack and Annie were crouching down in the driver's seat. Jack felt a rush of panic. He pulled out their list. His hands were shaking as he read, "Be brave." "Oh, great," he thought. Another cannon shell whizzed overhead, and then another. The ground exploded over and over in flashes of light. Dirt clods flew everywhere. Clouds of smoke and more dust filled the air. The horses were neighing and whinnying. "Be brave," Jack was thinking. "Be brave." Chapter 7 is called Helping Hands. The firing came to an end. The horses calmed down. The smoky air began to clear. Clara handed Jack and Annie each a canteen. "Fill these up quickly," she said. "We have no time to waste." Jack's legs felt wobbly as he followed Annie to the creek. They filled their canteens. They climbed back into the wagon. "Keep alert," said Clara. "Look for the wounded as they come off the battlefield." She snapped the reins. The horses started off again. As they bumped along, Jack looked ahead for wounded soldiers. "There!" cried Annie. She pointed to a man who was limping toward them and waving his arms. The man looked very young, more like a teenage boy. His uniform was torn, too. It wasn't a blue uniform, though. It was gray. Clara pulled the horses to a stop. "But wait, he's a Confederate soldier," said Jack. "When someone is hurt, you give them a helping hand, no matter who they are," said Clara. Her voice grew softer. "I have seen courage and kindness on both sides of this war. Sometimes things are not as simple as they seem." Jack was glad that they had stopped to help the soldier. He jumped out of the wagon. "Do you need a helping hand?" he asked the young man. "Thank you," the soldier said softly. Jack helped him into the back of the wagon. The soldier lay down on a pile of blankets and closed his eyes. Jack climbed back onto the seat beside Clara. She snapped the reins and they rode on. They came across more ragged men resting in the shade of an oak tree. These soldiers all wore blue uniforms. Again, Clara stopped the horses. "See if any of these men need a ride to the hospital," she told Jack and Annie. Jack glanced at the soldier sleeping in the back of the wagon. "Can a Confederate and a Union soldier be together?" he asked worriedly. Clara nodded. "Sometimes men are simply too sick and tired to be enemies anymore," she said. "Sometimes they even know each other. Many families and friendships have been torn apart by this war." "Let's go," said Annie, hopping out of the wagon. Jack followed. They carried their canteens to the men under the oak tree. "Hi," said Annie cheerfully. "Does anyone need to go to the hospital?" "Only John, our drummer boy," a soldier said. "He's suffering from heat stroke, but we all need some water, miss." Jack saw a young boy lying on the ground. His eyes were closed. "Jack," whispered Annie, "he looks just like you." The boy did look a lot like Jack, just a few years older. "We better get him to Clara's ambulance right away," Annie said. She handed her canteen to one of the tired soldiers. Another soldier lifted the drummer boy to his feet. The boy opened his eyes and mumbled a few words. He tried to walk, but he swayed as if he were about to faint. "Wait!" Jack grabbed the boy. And this is a picture of Jack and Annie helping the drummer boy. "We'll give you a helping hand," Jack said. The drummer boy put his arms around Jack and Annie's shoulders. "Just a little further, John," Annie said. "You're doing great. Just a little further." The drummer boy moved as if he were walking in his sleep. His head was hanging down, and his feet were shuffling in the dust. "Take good care of him," one of the men called. "We cannot do without him." Chapter 8 is called Brothers, and I'll record that very soon. Thanks for being so patient, guys. Have a good day.